Hello, beautiful ladies. Welcome back to another Wamen Hour, where I'm joined tonight by two lovely, beautiful women. Tasha, welcome back to the show.
Hello.
And welcome, and thank you, Birdie, once again for joining us as my faithful birdie in the hand is worth two in the bush, as I always say.
Good evening. Thanks for having me again. It's good to be here.
We've got a great topic tonight that I'm really keen to talk about. I've been thinking about it all week, just getting ready to talk about this. And I think we truly have a groundbreaking topic that has not been covered, I believe, by any kind of political spheres that I know of. This is like truly a female-centered topic that's not dating or relationships or sex or marriage or anything. It's not about babies or children. It's about female friendship. And I think this is it's a topic of discussion that is extremely sparsely covered by pretty much everyone. But there are a few examples in media of it, namely this episode of The Simpsons that I'm showing a screenshot from at the moment. But before we get into that, we do have a few little bits to tidy up. I will remind everyone that 2 shows ago, when we did Whom Would You Wed, which by the way was covered on Lotus Eaters, if you saw that, they had a clip from their podcast just called Wamen. And it was Dan Hobbs, winner of the Whom Would You Wed contest, talking about how he came to win it. I think he just used the entire segment as an excuse to brag, to be honest with you. But that was nice to be covered on the Lotus Eaters and to have have all our faces and our voices on there. We're really getting places, ladies. And during that stream, we said that we would put all of the proceeds towards the Barbie Fund, which is the fundraising target to send as many Wamen Hour panelists to see the new Barbie movie as possible. So the more money we get, the more of us can go to see it, because we don't want to spend our own hard-earned money on on watching the Barbie movie. So we're going to get you guys to pay for it. So I'll have to, because last week we put the usual Wamen Hour on hold. I was on holiday, and I uploaded a chat with my mum that we recorded ages ago. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Do let me know what you thought of it, because I do enjoy talking to my mum and having these more kind of just low-key conversations. But I do have to read the total for the Barbie Fund. So we have £20, £22, 20. Let's just call dollars pounds, because it pretty much is 24, 20, 29, 39. My goodness, I think we've got about $59 to spend on Barbie movie tickets. So I think we'll get as many. I can't imagine there'll be many panelists who are interested in going. Birdie, you interested? If your ticket is paid for by
Yes.
our lovely patrons. Unfortunately, we don't
I need
live
to judge this.
we don't live close together enough to all go together. But in spirit, we will go and we will review it together.
Yes.
And I've heard it's the female version of The Matrix. That's what they're saying. It's not out yet, so nobody's actually seen it. But the plot apparently is just The Matrix, but for women. So looking forward to that. But without further ado, shall I introduce our topic for tonight, which is, I've called it Alpha Females, because I wanted to allude to this idea of hierarchy and status among women, like among female friendship groups, among human women. Adults, but also I think it's even more obvious among children and teenagers, this hierarchical nature of female relationships. I think it's not a very controversial take that women are hypergamous when it comes to dating men. That is, they select men who are the best in their eyes among many different criteria. They'll select men who they believe are excel in various competencies and attractivenes, wealth, sometimes to pick the most shallow ones, but also intelligence and sense of humor, things like that. But I think, if possible, I think women are even more status sensitive when it comes to their friendships. And I really wanted to talk about this after going to a children's birthday party a few weeks ago, and this. Like children's birthday parties are not what they were when I was a kid, and I'm sure it's the case for Tasha and Birdie as well, where it's no longer about pass a parcel and eating cake and dressing up in a costume that your mum made for you. It's like a hired venue, an entertainer, a disco, bubbles, and this is like a 4-year-old's party. You invite like 30 children, all of their mums come, their siblings, and I was at this party, and I know this woman and her daughter, who's the little birthday girl. They are not extremely wealthy people. Like they, I don't want to disparage her at all. They're a lovely family, but I've been to their house. This is not what I would consider living in your means. Like this party was far beyond extravagant. Like this party was so much more extravagant than my wedding. Which, if viewers of the show will know, was a very low-key affair. But if the budget for this party was spent on a wedding, I would think that was somewhat reasonable. And this was, just a 4-year-old's birthday party. And I realised when I'm standing there, enjoying these wonderfully, freshly cooked barbecue lunch that they've made, and this cake, and the party the little party bags they send you home with toys in, and a slice of cake, and there was an ice cream van there giving an ice cream to everyone.
What?
Like the adults, the children, like everyone got an ice cream from the ice cream van. And
this is ridiculous.
The party, it's not for the children.
No.
The party is not being thrown for the benefit of the birthday girl or for the guests. The party is a status symbol for the mother, for the parents. Mm-hmm. They can, it's a lot cheaper than buying a really expensive house or a really expensive car. You just invite.
It's a social event.
Yes, it's a social event where you get to conspicuously spend your, to display your wealth to other mums, to your peers, to increase your own status among the other women, among your peer group. And I don't know if it worked or not, but I just had this revelation that I always thought, when you see it in movies, in this episode of The Simpsons, I thought this was something that only very shallow women did. Like, oh yeah, it's really shallow and fake to care about wealth, to care about good taste and good breeding, to think about your friends in that way in terms of their status and trying to get the coolest people to like you. It's just like, that's very high school. It's very Mean Girls. Mm-hmm. But at this party, I realized, like, this is why I have never been able to make female friends, because I haven't been playing this game. I don't know how to play this game. I don't buy expensive clothes or wear makeup. I don't know like a thing about how to impress women because I never thought that was important. And I've just realized now, at the age of 30, I've been so far behind everyone else. So I do wonder, is this your experience? Tasha, you're a little bit older than me. I feel like you've been around the block. You know everything there is to know about these kinds of things. So have I got it right, or am I being too fatalistic?
What you've noticed is a thing. So when women become mums, then that becomes their tool of being able to show off. And I've known women, and I've met loads of women and mums who do this. And I'm a bit like you. I've never been interested in playing that game at all. So I've always felt a bit kind of, and I've always, I've never competed on the same level as women seem to compete on, in whatever phase of life I've been in. So I've just sort of opted out of that that thing altogether. So I wouldn't say I'm typical, but the mum thing, I mean, when I moved to Hove and went into the sort of whole baby group thing initially, I realised that there was this competitive, yummy mummy, middle class mum thing where, I was up making cupcakes and the kids had the designer outfits, they had the extra amazing parties, the mums were preparing all this amazing food, and I'd sort of show up with baby vomit on my shoulder, just just kind of, wow. You know, how did you make? I don't know. There seemed to be this competitive perfect mum thing going on, and showing off. Yeah, showing off your house, children's outfits, buggies. There was a competitive buggy thing. You had to have the special, expensive singing and dancing buggy, and then that goes into birthday parties. And I think when they go older into teens, then it's mobile phones, fancy trainers, there's the kids clubs as well. How many clubs, expensive fancy clubs, can you get the kids into?
You're getting your kids to learn a musical instrument or to go to judo or something.
Well, I had a friend who was definitely, even before she had kids, she was playing this. She was having these big parties, and they were like, you know, amazingly big parties with fancy DJs and amazing food, and you know that was her thing. So it was always sort of like the cool people and the most outrageous people. And then when she had kids, because I'm really into music and have made music, she used to force her daughter to sit down at the piano and do a recital for me, and I used to feel really uncomfortable about it. Like, no, it's all right. She doesn't have to. It was the daughter didn't want to do it, and I was like, don't worry, she doesn't have to play for me and perform. But it was just to get the kids thing on the CV. It wasn't because she loved music. Her daughter didn't want to be doing it, but it was just that status thing of my daughter's got piano on her CV, and she's got the best.
It's not just about money. There's also I don't know if you know Rob Henderson is a writer who's recently talking about luxury beliefs. He was on Jordan Peterson's podcast. He's been around like a lot of podcasts in the last year or so, and I met him at the National Conservatism Conference. And his writing about luxury beliefs is this idea that what you believe and what you talk about is also part of your status. So high status people, they have these high status opinions, which are things, you know, progressive woke opinions that they they get to show people how well informed they are and how woke they are. There's this not the absolute most crazy stuff about that we see, the woke madness, but there's a kind of higher status version of it that's very BLM, very very regime, basically, like the BBC flavor of opinion, the Guardian, that kind of tier of person. Bertie, what's your experience being friends with women? Do you find it easy? Have you managed it? Are they shallow?
No. This is the funny part. I mean, people of this channel know again that I do sway both ways, but I am marrying a man, and that is because I find women irritating and difficult to get on with. But I can't live with another woman. I just can't do it. But I do think it's down to henpecking, majorly. And I had this a lot, especially during college. There was always the group of women. I mean, the best way to kind of describe it is, if you're in a restaurant and there is a table full of women, they are going to be the loudest ones in the room, regardless of if you've got football players or anything in there. The women are going to be the loudest.
A group of women, yeah.
A group of women, yeah.
Only women.
Only women. And that is purely down to the women each woman wants to be heard over the top of the others. Whether or not they realise they're doing it, I mean, we've all done it at some point, where we've all, been guilty of being in a group and, wanting to be heard over everybody else. And that's just because you want to be the top hen, right? And we biologically, 9 times out of 10, we don't realise we're even doing that. But I do have a theory that this kind of changes as you get older and depending on your relationship status and so on. So... gaggle of women, exactly that. Yeah. So in terms of, as you were saying earlier, a woman's status, and you were saying they want to impress other women. Now, the way I heard that was that woman wants to diminish the other women. She wants to be the one who wants to be seen. She wants to tread on the other women. She wants to get the alpha male. She wants the men's attention. And whether or not that's because she's not in a relationship yet or she's not happy with her relationship, that's down to her to decide. But I do think this changes so there's 3 parts to this. So you have the woman who's, let's say, single, who diminishes other women. She will push them, she'll put them down, she will, try and climb to the top, she'll talk over you, henpecking. The second part is if she's found her partner, whether male or female, whatever, and she's happy in that relationship, she's now trying to put on that status, not to impress other women or other men, but to impress her partner. So, I mean, was very common in the 50s, for example. You know, a woman would get dressed or dress up a bit for when her partner came home from work. So she would impress him and try and keep him impressed. And this wasn't to, you know, try and keep her husband or any nonsense like this. This was just to show him that she still cared, you know, she still wanted to impress him, just to keep a happy marriage. And that's, you know, that's a great thing to do. And the third thing is the mum. It's what somebody commented earlier as an alpha mum. You know, when you have your kids, then you hit a new level of status. So then the henpecking kind of starts all over again, and you kind of hit this circle of, especially if you have daughters. I've seen a lot of women with daughters. As soon as they get sort of 10, 12 and start hitting the early teenage years, yeah, it's all about what clubs they go to, what they're good at, how many parties they can go to, and what they're wearing. And, you know, that's the next sort of henpeck. You're then trying to impress the other mums because you can give your child everything. So it's not necessarily showing them how much you have, it's showing them how much you can give to your children. So it kind of goes round in a full circle.
I think I would add to that I've now started to see weddings as, you know, this it's like the mega version of the children's birthday party, where now I've started seeing weddings as just this, like the reason that people are still getting married, even though it's no longer tied to having children. You know, the people get married sort of independently. They have children first and they get married later, or they just never have children at all. But marriage is still endured in what is a very superficial, materialistic society that we live in, because the wedding is such a massive status symbol to show all the other women, I have this man and he is marrying me, and we're having this massive party. Look at my dress, look at my hair, my makeup. I'm beautiful, I'm marrying a beautiful man, we have lots of money, everyone can come to the party. And I'm not saying all weddings are like this, obviously. Congratulations on your engagement, by the way, Bertie. But you know, it should be a celebration of love, right? And introducing yourself as a couple to the community.
Absolutely.
But I think the only reason marriage has endured in this very shallow society is because it's an opportunity to have this very self-centered moment where all eyes are on you. And you get to be the, you know, the prince and princess of the day.
This seems to be more common in what I would call the rich
couples.
Sorry,
Bertie, you said something and you're frozen now.
Oh, did I freeze? Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Just do the wave test. It always works. I would say this is more common in, you know, the rich couples or the Dino couples, especially if they're young. You know, because they're basically socialites. You know, the Dino couples are socialites. They're always trying to impress their peers. They're always trying to impress their group of friends. They've got to be better than each other all the time, even though from the outside, and I'm sure we can all agree on this, they all look the same. You know, they all have these big fancy weddings. They all wear the same thing. They all always hire the same car. You know, it always looks the same to anyone else watching. The conformity is an interesting aspect of this. Sorry to trample over you, but no,
all my life I've tried to be like an individual. Like this is a lie that is in like movies, it's in books, it's in everything we consume. It's like, be yourself, be an individual, like wear the clothes you want to wear. Everyone's like encouraging you to be different, but actually everyone's just judging you by their own standards of fashion, their own standards of taste. And I think about that film American Psycho, where the Christian Bale, he's just surrounded by a group of men who are identical to him with very like subtle differences, and they're the scene where they're comparing like near identical business cards. This is like perfect example of the kinds of like the ways that women kind of style themselves to be like identical to their friends. They're comparing nearly identical handbags and shoes.
I think it's in everybody to want to an extent, signal something to show what kind of person you are. So it doesn't. I mean, what you were saying earlier, Poe, about, you know, the status, even in the intellectual circles of, you know, statusing that you're progressive. How progressive can you be in front of your friends, and how many books have you read about something? This happens within every single I mean, I used to be involved in a lot of different music scenes, and I used to be in bands, and I was sort of been in a lot of cliques and scenes. It's always the same. Doesn't matter how different the scenes are. They always think that they're better than everybody else. They signal by what they wear sometimes, or by what the talking points, or what music they listen to, how cool they are, how in the marriage sense. I used to DJ at weddings, and I stopped doing it because I just couldn't stand it anymore. Because it was mainly the brides who were. I mean, I had a really low key, kind of very low key wedding. In fact, we didn't even tell anyone we were getting married until we got to the campsite, and then we told everyone, by the way, we got married yesterday. And my friends were furious. We didn't get a chance to do anything. I was like, I don't want you to do anything, because I didn't want to be, the bride sitting there being congratulated for doing nothing except wearing a dress. That's how I thought about it. But I remember the run up to all the weddings. I was like the sort of go-to DJ, and my friends would ring me and give me the list of all the music that they wanted. And one woman who I worked with, who I barely knew, just kept going, I want you to come play, I want you to come play. And I was like, I don't really play weddings anymore. And she was like, no, you must. I was like, okay. And then a week before the wedding, she said, what are you going to wear? And she was really preoccupied about how I was going to look. And and I said, well, I don't know. I think I'll just find a nice dress. And she was like, are you going to look nice and feminine? Because I tended to be more casual at that point. I was, and it was just, the whole thing was, but yeah, I think it's just that signaling thing that everyone does. But women do it I always found female friendships difficult to navigate. When I was at school, I found it easier to get along. Well, I was bullied at school. I was bullied by the boys and the girls, but I'd rather be bullied by boys any day of the week than the girls. Because men, in my opinion, it's straightforward. It's easier to navigate. Even the annoying ones, I kind of know what it is and what's going on there. With women, I always found it was impossible to know what was.
That's part of what I wanted to get onto.
I just didn't really understand. Is she my friend? Is she not my friend? I had one female friend who I eventually just fell out with magnificently, who used to copy me. She used to copy my clothes, and she used to really embarrassingly sort of praise me all the time in front of people. Like, she'd get drunk and she'd be like, oh, I love your clothes. Oh, you're so great. And really kind of needy and sort of cloyed. And then she'd try and sort of steal my boyfriend, or get really drunk and go from being a sycophant to then getting more and more drunk and then shouting at me, like this is being really nasty. And this
is the ugly side of the group of friends. This is why I kind of wanted to call it alpha female. Is this like the hierarchical nature of it? It's not just the impressing strangers, which women also do, but when you have a group of female friends, it's not like Sex in the City where they're all sitting around having a good time and telling jokes. Like something I've thinking back to when I did have more female friends, there's much more kind of what's called backbiting, henpecking, backstabbing. All this behavior suddenly starts to make sense when you realize that they're crab potting their way to the top. If you're friends with a bunch of women that even if you don't consciously think of it, and I think women don't, you know which women you're trying to impress. Who's like your best friend, like who's the best one, and what often happens is that a woman will try to discredit the other women in order not to impress like a man or to impress strangers, but there's one specific woman, the Regina George of Mean Girls, whose praise, whose opinion matters so much more than the others, and a bad word from her can completely discredit. Can just kick someone out.
I think a good thing to remember about that, though, even though, so let's say Regina George, we'll use her as the main example. Yeah, her opinion is heard over everybody else's, and if she says something against you, that's it. Everybody's going to be against you. But at the same time, her opinion's only heard because she was horrible to other people. So they were afraid of going against her.
Yeah.
So at the same time, she was a massive bully. And going back to what Tasha said earlier, that this is very common in women in general, especially if they've been drinking. And I've got one best friend who I grew up with. I have acquaintances, as we all do, but there's one best friend. She's my only maid of honor alongside my sister. Not maid of honor. I just promoted her, and she doesn't even have a title. Hilarious. She's my bridesmaid alongside my sister, who's also my bridesmaid. And she used to do the same. We've got to the point now, if she says something out of turn, I will tell her. As it's the same as if I say something out of turn, then she will tell me. We don't have an argument about it anymore. It's just a case of, okay, you're being and then we'll just let it go.
Yes,
but at the same point,
a dyad of female friends is the most stable female friendship.
Yeah.
Just two, not a group.
Yeah.
It's a disaster. It's backstabbing and backbiting.
Yeah.
Two
Absolutely.
women being best friends.
She is very much a socialite, whereas I'm not. So she will go out and she's got other female friends. But I don't hang out with those other female friends. When we get together, it's just us two. And she did exactly the same as your friend did, Tasha. It was on the tractor run, which I did post on my Twitter a few weeks ago. And before we even got there, she asked me what to wear. She was like, "What are you wearing?" I was like, "You're driving the tractor. I'm your passenger. I'm a pillion for the day. Why are you asking me what are you going to wear? You're going to be in a cab. No one's going to see you." It was insane. And I just thought, why are you asking me this? But at the same time, onto the wedding thing again, I completely get it with brides being bridezillas. I don't have a maid of honor. That's where it ended up coming in. I am doing it myself, basically, because I know if somebody else does it, I'm not going to be happy with it.
No.
Now, I don't know whether that's just female brain kicking in, thinking, no, I have to be in control of this, or because I know, even my sister, we are completely different, and I just know I will have to spend the whole wedding reminding her or reminding my best friend whose wedding it actually is. I don't want to be doing that, and I feel like that's the same in a lot of female groups. So if you want something done your way, you kind of have to do it yourself, or you end up just copying somebody else, because you can't seem to make that divide.
It's also that domineering. Because I'm pretty laid back with my friends. I don't actually impose too much on them. But I've had friends who they just want to dominate everything.
Yeah.
And because I'm quite laid back, and I just kind of, I'll go, if I go out on a night out that someone's organised, for example, I did have a friend who, she had to control every aspect of everything. Right, come on now, we're going to go and do this. And she never would once ask, oh, actually, is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
And I think the wedding thing would be, my worst nightmare would be a friend like that stepping in and going, darling, this is what we're going to do now. You need me because I know loads of things and I'm in charge. And in the end, we did end up actually falling out because it just got, it's just that controlling thing that she had she just would take over. And
see, I feel like that's the woman in the group who wants to be the alpha. She's the one who wants to be there.
She wasn't,
but she isn't. That's it. But she isn't. She's more of the.
Yeah, and I didn't really think about it until like we had a big falling out, and that was over just the way she was behaving with with COVID and just basically going around the internet just shouting at everybody. But so eventually I was just like, look, this domineering, this is too much for me. But anyway, a male friend of mine who'd been sort of knows her really well, knows me really well, and he just said, look, it's because you're the alpha female, and you'll always have females trying to take you down. And I say, well, I don't think I'm the alpha female. I don't see myself in that way. And he'll say, well, you are. And I'll be like, well, if I am, then surely I'd recognise that I am. The fact that I don't realise I am means I'm probably not. Because if you are the alpha, you'd know it.
Yeah. Can I throw a curveball in there? Yeah. Because that thing,
I don't want to be, actually. I'd rather step out of the way, to be honest. I don't want to be.
When we said earlier, because I was the same, I had a bit of a rough time in school. And yeah, the worst ones for that were other girls.
Yeah.
And do we think that those girls do, or even women do that now? They will constantly battle you because you are the alpha and you don't realize it. So
Well,
in school, you know,
that's-
if you've got a bunch of girls constantly on at you,
yeah.
is that because you're
Well,
secretly the alpha,
well,
or
my
is that, you know,
husband
are they
thinks.
worried about what you're doing next?
I
Or
The
think it's
fighting
about being
happens.
secure in yourself. Sorry. I think if you're comfortable in your own skin, this is what my husband said to me. He said, because you're comfortable in your own skin and you don't really have to prove it, there's, I think you're either a woman. I've got a few really close female friends, and the ones that have endured over the years are the ones that don't care actually what other people think. They're kind of doing their own thing, and they really actually they're not playing any of those games. They're just doing their own thing, and they're comfortable They're comfortable in who they are. They're not trying to prove anything.
I think the ones that,
And
exactly, they're not trying to
there's
prove
this
anything.
particular type of insecure woman who might even be like have an amazing job, have an amazing life, an amazing house, but it's still somewhere you sense that they've still got something that they want to prove to others.
Yeah.
And it's all about this external locus of kind of attention that they want. They need it from others. They can't find it in themselves just by themselves. Do you know what I mean?
That very low key, like chilled out kind of woman. That's like how I've identified my whole life. And what the realization I came to recently, which is why I wanted to talk about it, is that's a good way to live your life. Like, right, not to be chasing status, not to be trying to impress people. Just live the life the way that you believe is right.
Absolutely.
And don't care about friendship. That is low status. This is the kind of behavior, it will not win you it will not impress anyone. You will not make female friends, and you just have to accept that, because even the women who you don't think are shallow, who are not mean, they're not rude or catty or bitchy, like they're just perfectly nice women, they are playing the game. Right, and they do not have any time for people who are not playing the game, and this is the realization that I came to. It's like, this is why I can't make female friends. Even the women who like talking to me,
you're not playing.
Our children play well together. They're not going to invite me to their parties. They're not going to. Our kids are not going to have play dates because I'm not playing the game and they are. And to even associate with me would be to lower their own status.
Right. But I mean, I've always had I'm quite sociable. I've always been in a lot of social circles and had quite a lot of friends. But I'm not interested in. I don't really feel like the need to. I still don't feel like I'm playing along with those games. You know what I mean?
You've discovered the Da Vinci Code. You must teach me the ways, because I'm not getting there. I was going to say, sorry to come. Before the end of the stream, I really wanted to get around to this idea that there are different hierarchies that exist within different kinds of groups of people. And when I was a teenager, for a few years, I was good friends with a bunch of goths. And if you have ever been friends with goths or emos, or I suppose the kids now have some kind of other thing, but if you've ever been friends with these alternative kinds of groups, you'll know that the status hierarchy is like inverted compared to the preppy kids, like the popular kids.
Yes.
In order to gain status among goths, you have to be the most goth. You have to get the piercings, the tattoos. You have to wear black. You have to actively reject. It's like a cult. You have to reject the mainstream in order to get in with the goth kids. Otherwise, you're a poser. They have this word poser for people who are not goth enough, who are just pretending to be goth because they've got to be cool, right? Yeah. And I put a picture of nuns up on the screen because I've never been to a convent. I'm not friends with nuns, but I imagine in a convent or an abbey, I imagine the status hierarchy is based on holiness. And you gain status among nuns not by being the hottest or the coolest or having the best habit, but by being like almost like the opposite, like by being the most adherent to scripture and by saying your prayers the best and by singing best in the choir. I imagine that's how you gain status among nuns. What do you guys think of that?
The most righteous.
Most righteous. Yeah. I feel like there is, with all groups, I think age comes into it as well. So going back historically, you had your women friends weren't friends as such. You never used to hang out because you had time to. You used to hang out because you relied on each other. You relied on your neighbours. You relied on your aunts. You relied on the old woman down the road.
Yes.
And especially in sort of smaller communities. So there was always the elder woman of the village, as it were. I mean, a lot of villages now have a couple of them. I know there's a couple of them in this village. Various groups. There's the eldest woman of the WI. There's the church warden. There's a couple of those women who are basically the elder women of the village, and everybody respects them. But I feel like that's the same in things like with nuns. You've got a woman there who's probably been there for the longest time, which means she's read the most scripture. This is just me speculating now. I hope if she'd been there the long time, she'd read the most scripture. But I feel like it comes down to experience as well. It's not just it's the classic respect your elders. You expect I can't speak tonight. You respect your grandparents because they have more experience than you.
And wisdom.
It might not necessarily be in everything, but what they've got experience in is still going to be more than what you've got on certain subjects. So yeah, you might have more experience with one subject than they do in another, but in the long run, things that are either biological or historical or things that we do naturally, they're going to have more experience. So when I say that, I mean childcare, schooling, things like this that we confront every single day. They're going to have more experience because they're older.
Yeah, but in our society,
I'm really glad you brought that up.
We don't, in our society, we worship youth. So, I mean, getting older as a woman, you do, I think unless you've got a family, I can't imagine what it must be like being the old single cat lady with no kids or family, because that's where you derive meaning. Is when you're younger, your meaning comes from, say, your social group, or trying to find a good husband or boyfriend or whatever it is. You're kind of competing in those
I mean,
realms.
I feel like
but when you go into
older,
parenthood, it's more about a kind of wisdom thing, as in you kind of move past all that stuff. And I find in the last 10 years, what's happened with me is I've cared less and less and less what people think about me, except for the people that I really respect in my life. And they're the people that I care about what they think of me.
Yeah, no,
and
absolutely.
it's quite freeing to get to a point of just kind of like, I actually don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, no,
I'll be friends with my kids, and that's enough for me.
Yeah.
My husband,
I get not caring what people think, but I feel like you're completely right about the today's youth, and their
it's all run the wrong
thing.
way. Yeah,
it is the wrong way. However, I do still think that with again going back to the older generation in terms of having a head of the family, or an older woman of the village, if they've got no kids, they've got no family, it is sort of down to them if they still want to be the older woman of the village, or don't even realize it. I mean, one of our neighbors, who is one of the main women of the village, her kids have all moved away. She barely sees her family now, but we still respect her as the woman of the village because she's out in the community. We see her at church. She's out doing volunteer work. I see her at the local markets. She comes down to my work. So we still see her constantly. So in terms of that social group, she is very sociable. She does still hang around with everyone. So
I want to break up what you said about age being the sort of hierarchical determiner, because there's this modern idea that your immutable characteristics, like your age or your circumstances of your birth, are a really arbitrary way to determine hierarchy and status. But what I think we see with these informal hierarchies, that you constantly get this churning, fighting, tearing each other down, because everyone's fighting for status. Whereas, in a situation where all of the women's status is determined by their age and nothing else, it doesn't matter if you're the poorest woman there. If you're the eldest, you're being served the tea first.
Yeah.
You get the last word because you're the eldest. If it's based on something that you can't change, there's no fighting. Right? I think it's a much more stable, even if it's arbitrary, and even if the oldest woman ends up being some old dotty, bitchy woman, right? Yeah. Maybe she's not the best leader, but there's a lot of sort of efficiency in the other women of the group, even if she's like a corrupt leader, they at least can focus their attentions on just getting on with it, getting on with each other, and trying to make the best of it, rather than all of this wasted energy being spent on tearing each other down, fighting for status. There's something that we like this. Social mobility is the.
I do think women within the sort of same age groups, I feel like they argue more than those who have a wider span. So I mean, I'm friends with women who are old enough to be my mum, but we barely argue, or we don't argue. And I've got quite a wide span. Even the women I work with, there is such a large group of us and age span. So not necessarily like my age compared to my colleagues. It's all of us, all 5 of us are completely widespread on the age range. So we very rarely clash heads, which does work because we know who the boss is, who isn't the oldest. It used to be the eldest last year, and now it's her daughter. So we do kind of know, age-wise, who's in charge. But then it does kind of go down in terms of, we know that the youngest, so at the moment me, knows how to use the technology a bit more. So they'll come and get me if something goes wrong with the till or something, things like that. But they also know that, well, I know that they've been there longer than I have. So I know to respect the fact that they are older than me and they've been there longer. But it's a case of, I had it at my previous job. There was a lady there who was a lot older than I was, but she'd only just joined, whereas I'd been there for a while. So that completely flipped it on its head. Everybody had respect for her because she was an older woman and she'd started a new job. They did not treat me with the same respect, even though I'd been there for years before her. So that was an instant show of, oh, well, she's clearly got more experience, even though she'd just come into a new job. So I do think it's still there, but it is very frustrating sometimes. It works in some cases. I think WI is a very classic example of that. You've got the ranking of women, and it's the same even if you go over to men, dare I say, a group of men. Again, historically, if you were starting a job, you would start as a boy and you'd work your way up. And the eldest man there was usually either the one in charge, or he had the most experience, and he was usually the most well paid because he was the eldest, so he was the one you respected. And as a child, you worked your way up, so the older you got, the more respected you got, and that's kind of how it works. So I think we've not completely lost it, but it does make sense to have it in a lot of circumstances because it just saves argument. Literally saves argument.
Something I want to come back to what you said earlier. I think that the most fights happen not necessarily with the alpha, which is one theory that was floated. That may be the case, but my personal theory is that the fights happen between people who have equal claim to that status. So if 2 people of a similar status will fight the most, they'll fight more with each other than they will with the people above them or below them, because why fight with someone below them? Like, they're not even worth your time. And if you fight people above you, then you're just getting yourself into trouble. But I think the fights happen between people who are of equivalent status to each other.
I think
and in that situation you're talking about, Birdie, where there's a woman who's older but less experienced in that field, that's another situation where fights can happen because you both have a kind of equal but different claim to that status.
I think everything's been turned on its head, because I think for sort of thousands of years or hundreds of years, things were pretty stable. You'd probably live in a small community and it would be more probably based on age, and people would probably keep the sort of work they were doing would be, you'd know from a child what your life would end up being. And now society we got to a point where hierarchies it's turned on its head, and people are kind of really against even the idea of hierarchies. The idea that someone can be above you or below you or better than you or higher status than you, even though people act this out, they don't want to mention it or talk about it. And I think everything's been kind of messed up now in the modern world. So we're grappling with a whole new way of living in terms of evolutionary. In terms of evolution, like the last 100 years is like a minute. But look at the changes in terms of how people live, and how people move around and how people communicate, and the differences between men and women, and all these lines being blurred. I think the hierarchies are still there, and they just come out in different ways. And I think people are just a lot more confused now about where they are in society.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
People who don't understand how nature works will develop bad systems,
Yes.
right? So people who just deny
create
this
their
because
own.
it's ugly will
Yes.
not make good systems. They won't be good bosses. They won't be good. They won't operate in the world correctly because they don't understand, or they're just denying reality.
Yeah, and human nature
Yeah.
as well. You know, I mean, you have to just accept that there are going to be people who are better at things than you. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, absolutely.
and people, some people are stronger, some people are more intelligent, some people are more skillful and more creative, and you know, and it's not just about applying yourself. We're born different, you know, and I think that this sort of trying to deny that this stuff exists, to sort of like, well, we don't talk about that. It's kind of
Yeah,
like taboo
I think it
subject,
falls
isn't
back
it?
to what you said earlier, Tasha, in terms of, I feel like we get to a certain age and it's, I don't give a toss what people think anymore.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty safe to say all three of us have hit that stage. It
yeah,
gets to a point where people can keep hammering on, they'll keep going for ages with comments, but it will still get to a point. With everyone, it will get to a point. But I think that's got a lot to do with, again, settling down. But I don't know whether this is the same for you two, but I'm going to throw another curveball in there. With a group of women, if you've got some women attacking others, for instance, I mean, in school, in now, whenever, I've had people comment against me in school, and up to this day, I still do not know why or what I did.
yeah.
And I've had similar situations in today's life as well. Is that common for other women not to understand why someone's being, have an attitude towards you, or whether you might have an attitude towards them?
I think if you don't recognise, so I think women have a problem understanding jealousy in other women, and I think jealousy is a massive problem, the massive thing with women and young women. And if women are threatened by another woman in whatever, and a lot of it's like would be about looks, but it could be about personality, it could be about intelligence, it could be about women. It's true. And young women particularly. And I was bullied at school, and I was insecure. I was insecure about myself, and then they just preyed on all my insecurities. You're ugly, or all this kind of stuff. But I think when I started at school, and I was actually quite confident, happy kind of kid, and I was quite good at my studying, I think they were kind of like, who the hell's she? And they thought I was posh, believe it or not. And I think they were just like, we're going to bring her down. It's only in hindsight I stood out. And I think that they were intimidated by the fact that I was kind of different to them, and I looked different, and I sounded different, and I was doing well in my work, and I was kind of just sort of a bit happy-go-lucky, confident to begin with.
Do we think it's because you are so not you specifically, but because I had the same situation myself? Do we think it's because you or we were different to them? Do we think it's because they either saw something in us that they wanted, or that they saw something that they didn't have?
I think I get this. It's the cancel culture phenomenon. It's the mob. People they bond together. It makes people conform more to the group. What am I saying? It cements your position in the group to attack people who are not in the group, or to eject people from the group. Is also kind of a bonding experience for you. So you can gain status among your peers by pointing out non-conformities. It makes you like the best conformist. We're talking about the nuns who are competing on sort of righteousness. Well, it makes you look even more holy, even more righteous, to point out the non-righteousness in others. It just cements your position in the group to eject other people. Which I think is the phenomenon that you may be describing. That kind of frenemy dynamic is slightly different, where it's like, are they my friend? Like, why are they saying bad things about me to other people? And I've been on both sides of this. Thinking back to when I was at school, there were girls who really liked me when we were alone. We would like, we'd have like a group that we went to together, and we could hang out. We had a really good time. We'd make each other laugh, and like the best friends ever. And then if I went at her at school where she was with her other friends, suddenly I'm not cool anymore.
Oh, that's
like,
so cool.
She doesn't want to be with me because I'm not high status enough to be with those friends. I'm bringing down her status.
She doesn't want to show the other girls that she's friends. I learned so much about human nature through being bullied at school from boys and girls, because I'd have quite okay friendships with a lot of those kids individually, and then when they all got together, then they'd kind of mob and bully me and do all that stuff. And then towards the end, when I just didn't care anymore, towards the end, I was really bullied. Like, I mean, I won't go into it, but I was really bullied a lot. When it got to about the last couple of years of school, when I didn't care anymore, I was just like, oh, you can all piss off, I don't care anymore. And when I just started just not caring, they all changed. And then I was getting these individual kids who'd spent 2 or 3 years bullying me, telling me in private, going, oh, you're right, and I'm really sorry, and I don't know why you did that, and I think you're okay, and actually I think you're pretty cool, really, in private.
Exactly.
And acknowledging that they didn't know, they got swept along with it. And they didn't. And even now, I remember there were moments where there'd be a group of kids bullying me, and I'd look some of them directly in the eyes, and I'd go, why are you doing this, or whatever, and they'd look down. They wouldn't be able to look at me in the eyes because they knew it was wrong, but they just they didn't want to get picked out themselves.
Tasha, I had exactly the same experience. Again, I'm not going to go into it because it is not YouTube friendly. But I had the same. It got to a point. After it got to when I was in year 11, in UK school, and I just thought, I've had enough of this now. And they carried on, and I had it even when I left school. And some of them, I think the best thing I ever did was because we all, still go back to where I grew up and things. So I still see some of them. And to this day, they will still come up to me and pretend like nothing's happened. And it winds me up no end. So the best thing I ever did, and I still do it, is if they come up to me going, oh, how are you? You look great. You seem to be doing really great now. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I call them out on everything they did. I'm like, is that because you did da-da-da-da-da? Or I'll point blank say, don't be friends with me now when you did this when I was younger. I said, I'm still the same girl. I'm the woman who was that girl then. I have not changed. And I just walk away, and I just think, no. And a lot of them are women. A lot of them are women.
Do you feel a certain Schadenfreude? Is that the expression? Because do you feel like when they're coming out and going, oh, you're doing so well, and and they can see that maybe you're happy and well in your life, does that make you feel like, ha?
Yeah, a little bit, I have to admit, because it's always the ones, especially the women again, who were the worst, should we say, who did the most damage.
Yes.
They are either not doing very well now, or they've not taken care of themselves. They still live with their parents, or they're not doing well at all. They haven't moved on. From what I can see, they have not moved on. They've just gone downhill. Whereas I just moved up.
But I found
in my eyes, I moved up.
Bullies, I found that in my school. I found that the bullies or the really popular kids, it's like, I mean, I could be wrong, but this is what I noticed. They had their day at school, and I kind of bloomed after school and came out of myself, and then things got better for me. And it's almost like they were so cocky, and they had it so that actually leaving school, they kind of, their status dropped because they were suddenly in the real world. And it's like, whereas the opposite happened to me. I was suddenly in the real world, and I was like, oh wow, everyone's being nice to me. I'd go into workplaces and thinking, oh, people's cool. It's not like school.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's the same for you, but linking it back to the alpha female, with because it was again more than one group of them in school of different age groups, there was always an alpha female of those groups, and those alpha females now are not alpha females anymore. No. They have lost their status severely.
Yes.
But I will say it wasn't always the popular ones. So the popular ones were the worst. But those who you would I hate to say it, but who you would expect to be bullies, who might be having a bit of a rough time at home and they're taking it out on other people.
Yeah.
Those were the ones I ended up kind of not having a soft spot for, but it got to a point where some of them were from the village I grew up in. So they would try it on the bus, they'd bully me, they'd, all sorts.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for them, I ended up working in the local pub. So I ended up gaining a lot more respect doing that because I had control. So suddenly the tables were turned. So beforehand they had control, and that this poor little girl who they stomped on, suddenly it changed because I could kick them out of a building. I could deny them a drink. I could do all sorts.
Power.
And I just thought that I had power. That was it. I had power, and suddenly I was the alpha in their eyes. If they see me now, it's weird because they'll say hello, but they're very sheepish about it, and it's always the women. The men just either don't say anything or will point blank apologise.
Well, the boys bullying
soft,
is a completely different dynamic because the boys really. I mean, I got chased across the A10 and thrown into the river, into the pond, I was put in tumble dry in a laundrette. I can laugh about it now, but the boys. Yeah,
no, I'm the same. We laugh about it now.
It was kind of like it would just happen really quickly, and it'd normally be sort of pushing over or something, and then that would be it. With the girls, they would collude to pretend to be my friend.
Yes.
And they go, "Oh, Tash, do you want to come out with us and go and do this?"
Like,
and then I'd go out with them, and they'd plot to try and belittle, and it was this whole thing that I couldn't figure out. Are they my friends? I don't really know what's going on.
With girls and women, with bullying and now, there's always a tactic. And I feel like, women have tactics, and I think, especially if it's a group of women, they will work together. Whether there's always an alpha, whether they realise it or not. So they'll, they
plot.
Yeah, they plot. So the alpha woman will suggest something, and let's just say the followers will go with that plan.
And they embellish on it as well. They build on it. Women, when they get together,
it's not changed now. If you've got a group of women and one of them says, whether it's good or bad, or one of them says, "Oh, let's go out tonight," her followers are just going to say yes. Whereas I see it as alpha and followers. Whereas I think all three of us can say we're not followers. I cannot follow other women. I'm not, I can't do it. But there is, obviously, you've got the alpha, and they'll still cluck. So if you have, let's say, another woman who thinks, "Oh, actually, no, I don't want to go out tonight. Let's do this instead." That's where the clucking begins. That's when they start arguing. Yes. That's when they start. But that's never going to change.
Well, then what they do is, I mean, I think we're very much in an age with social media, social media is a very feminine paradigm, isn't it? And I think Peterson's mentioned this as well, is that, men, when they're doing, I mean, traditionally men competing for alpha status, it would be more in the physical realm, but obviously maybe intellectually as well. There's other ways in which men compete, but the way women do it is reputation destruction. And ganging up and getting other people against that person, which is kind of what council culture is. And I think
men do it plenty on what you said about social media.
Men are starting to behave like women.
Yeah, no, it's I think we've given women a hard time on the stream, and just for that sake, I want to bring up that men do this. Like social media has brought out this behaviour in men in ways that I expect it's rarely been seen before. I was going to bring up.
We passed the watershed. I'll put it bluntly. Men are starting to become bitchy.
Yes.
that's the blunt way of putting it. As we bring up this image.
I
just remember someone talking about Blackadder. When the writers were talking about how they wrote this character, and they characterized him as he sucks up to people above him and he bullies people below him. Like this is like the character of Blackadder. Like this is how he operates. This is how he approaches every situation. Is who can I suck up to and who can I tread on to get what I need.
And that's his whole. And he's completely Machiavellian, isn't he? He just doesn't. It's just.
But it's not quite the same. The social media purity spiraling kind of behavior is it's not quite the Blackadder. I just don't happen to have that up, but it's more that what I was talking about before about signaling conformity to the group by coming up with ever higher standards for sort of group membership and by ejecting people who do not conform. I've seen that
Men do
so
that,
many times, and it is like for better or for worse, it's a feminine behavior. It's clucking, as you said, Bertie. And the people, you get these sort of schisms where people will either stick with the alpha, or they'll for one reason or another, maybe they think they can get more status in the new regime, or the splitters, the ones who have been ejected. You'll get like people with online followings. The followers will choose a side, and you get all these sort of filtering down. Like on Twitter, it's like literally your number of followers is your status, right? And you'll get the people who are following you literally, like, they'll unfollow one of you and they'll continue following the other, and that's like that's the divide.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the thing about men on social media is behaving like women. But I think the cliquey thing, as I said, I've been in lots of different scenes over the years, and I've seen lots of different dynamics between groups. And it always seems to melt down in the same kinds of ways. Like every scene that I was in the kind of like indie scene in Camden when I was in bands, and there was a whole scene going on with all the different bands. And initially you have that sort of honeymoon. This is great. I've met all these like-minded people and they're all so cool. And isn't everyone really friendly? And then after a few months, you start realizing that not everyone's not actually really friendly. And there's all these kind of battles and wars going on under the surface. And you start realizing that everyone's pitching to kind of out other people and kick them out, and you're not pure enough. And within the music scenes, it was purity spirals over music, and also promoters and people who organise events, and all these kind of competitions between bands, and so I noticed that, and I see that on social media now with cliques on social media. I mean, I think all these group dynamics all kind of pan out. Whatever the group happens to be revolving around, whatever it is, it always tends to descend into the same thing, I find. And kicking people out,
To bring it back to how to make friends. Something that I've noticed about this is something that my mum said to me actually recently that kind of clicked for me in this, because I had this on my mind, where she said that at university she became friends with other Christians through the Christian Society, and I know those people now. She's still friends. The friends you make in university, often you'll carry those throughout your life, and I know that some of these friends that my parents made at university are in a much higher sort of social status, or much lower social status, but they were able to cross these boundaries because they had that shared religion. The kinship that they had over worshipping together and going to Bible studies together, it was almost able to transcend other social status signifiers, wealth and fashion and all of these things. And I think that these online communities, something like my channel, or the kind of people that I'm associate with online. My associates. I do cringe to call them friends, because they're people I often haven't met at all and who I don't really socialize with. But when you have a shared ideology, if you're in a cult or a religion, or if you're in a group chat on Twitter, it almost there's still a hierarchy. There's no avoiding it. In every place, in every time, in every community, there's a hierarchy. And if you're not aware of it, it's probably because you're at the bottom of it. That's the that's the really grim way of putting it. But I think that you can kind of subvert it by introducing this sort of ideological component. If you're not, if I'm not winning with the yummy mummies, I can still be, but by creating interesting conversations on YouTube, and by having a channel and having a good Twitter account, I can like step over these other social signifiers of wealth and social class, and because we're in this sort of minority political opinion kind of group, that then becomes the hierarchy. So you kind of get to choose in life where to, like, who to be friends with and where you stand.
You gravitate
does that make sense?
Towards, you kind of, I mean, I've done that. I kind of you find your people, if you like.
Yes,
you gravitate,
that's what they say. That's what they call it.
yeah, you do, and I think
Yeah.
you sort of naturally that kind of happens. Well, that's how it's gone for me. I've sort of found stuff that I found these people online, and they seem to be saying some interesting things, and I just find I'm gravitated like sometimes I don't even know quite why, but I just find myself gravitated to a bunch of people, and I just find them interesting, and I'm drawn. You're drawn to your types of people. I mean, I'm not going to go online and start joining a community of women talking about hair and makeup. It's not. Do you know what I mean? It's not. That's not going to be my world. And for them, they found their thing, which is great for them, whatever, But of course, we gravitate towards. But yeah, within that, there's going to be. But then there's always a sense of. There's still a pecking that goes on, always. I think, whatever the group is, even maybe the Christian thing, maybe you've hit the nail on the head with something deeper and. Maybe that the religion thing, maybe that pulls people out a bit from themselves and from all those kind of things, because they're the thing that's binding them together is something greater or bigger. I don't know. Maybe I'm not actually a religious person myself, but maybe there's something there that's a bit more meaningful than just a lot of other sort of scenes. I don't know. I'm not in that kind of world, but what you were saying about your parents,
We've got super chats. Is there any closing remarks on this topic before we get to it? Birdie?
I think we've covered most of it, to be honest. Women cluck. There's always going to be an alpha, whether she knows it or not.
All right, Tasha, anything we didn't get to?
No, I sort of trailed off there, but yeah,
right.
I was like, oh, what am I saying?
It's been a long night.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot there.
Maybe it's a topic we can come back to. I think it's such an important topic. I was thinking about making a video about it, kind of taking in what you two have said and sort of solidifying it into some lessons, some thoughts. Because I think, like I said at the start, I think it's a really unexplored sort of topic of conversation that I think men aren't really aware of at all, and women, if they're aware of it, are sort of just struggling to navigate it, and even to talk about it is quite taboo. So I would like to. There's a book. Mean Girls was based on a non-fiction book called Queen Bees and Wannabes. Little known fact about that film, and wow. I kind of want to read it now because it's about high school. But I think the teenage women, it's the same behavior, but they just don't hide it. They don't try to hide it under sort of polite behavior. They're much more overt about the status hierarchies, about who's dating who's wearing the best clothes. It's more sort of overt and right out there. So I think there's probably a lot to learn from books like that. But
I think also to add an extra layer to it, I think class might have a lot to do with this kind of thing as well. Within the class, there's different ways that this manifests itself. Because I went to a really working class, a really rough school, and it was all about designer trainers and how and what clothes you wore. And I just always had the wrong clothes. Yeah. And I know it sounds really trivial, but I'd go to the school disco and they'd be like, "Look at what she's wearing," Oh, and they go, "I like your shoes," and it would all be very much.
Tasha, did we go to the same school? Because this is sounding a bit too familiar.
Oh God, we're going to have another chat about this, aren't we? Yeah. But I had the wrong trainers, I had the wrong jeans, and I didn't even know. I was like, "What's wrong with these jeans?" And they'd be like, "Because they weren't the exact, it's precise."
No, it wasn't what they had.
Yeah,
that's why it was wrong.
But they all look the same.
Exactly.
And the hair as well. My haircut wasn't right, and and I had the wrong bag. I remember my first day at school.
Everything was wrong. I had exactly the same. Everything I did was wrong. Everything I wore was wrong because I wasn't the same as them.
But the clothes is a big thing.
I kind of and I look at it now and I think, is that just because they couldn't understand why I didn't look the same as them? Were they questioning themselves?
They don't like that you're not trying to impress them. right? Like
Maybe
you're
that's it.
rejecting their hierarchy, which invalidates their like identity. Right? Like
I
the
feel
fact
like
that
that's a win now. Like I'm
if
rejecting the bully's
if they've
hierarchy.
spent like £200 on their trainers and you don't even care, like you don't even know what their trainers are, that just
Yeah.
invalidates that purchase. It makes it completely pointless.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. I didn't understand because I wasn't even, as you say, you didn't know what trainers. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, what? Well, why?
Yeah.
How are these different? And they'd be like, she doesn't even know that she's got the crappy ones and we've got the Nikes.
They're just mad that you don't care about their
Yes.
trainers. Really.
Like, how would you not know about Nikes?
Yeah.
Okay, let's on to super chats. We've got one about the Barbie movie from DRT,
wow.
our loyal patron. Thank you so much for $20. It's a Barbie world. You better enjoy the film and play the Dutch version of the Barbie theme. I'm guessing that's the Barbie girl, but in Dutch. I haven't heard that one.
I have heard that. It's a bit chaotic, I have to admit.
All right, I'm gonna give it a listen. I'll type that into YouTube when the stream is over. See if you can get Aiden Paladin on the Barbie train. Come on, Barbie, let's go party. Love it.
I don't know if Hayden would come on.
Well, she might. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, she might come on, but I don't know if she'll come and talk about Barbie.
Why not? I mean, the real question is the Barbie review going to be a Wamen hour or is it going to be a P.O. box? Because I kind of abandoned that podcast.
I do have one request. I feel like any of us who had... Sorry, I've got the fan. It's getting a bit warm over here. Anybody who had Barbies as kids, I feel like we need to get them out. I need to prove that we had Barbies and the different kinds of Barbies, because we were having this debate on women on our behind the scenes chat, shall we call? And I had a specific Barbie, and then it kind of got interesting in terms of the other different dolls, and it got a bit chaotic.
We're just going to be reviewing the. I love your Barbie story.
Film,
I'm not. I don't want to look at anyone's doll on the live stream.
No.
Yeah, I'm not
put
really
it in the
that
background. That's fine.
I had
just have it
Cindy.
sat like in the background.
All right, we've got
yeah.
Alice Liddell. Quentin Crisp was an individual in his day, but then copycats appear, and then that happens. Things change somehow. True individuals are good, though. That's definitely a very true phenomenon where you get these breakout stars who are really different. You know, you get a goth band, My Chemical Romance, that somehow manages to shatter the stratosphere and become mainstream, or like the anime that was once like underground, like nobody actually cares about anime, and then bam, Spirited Away, like millions, like Oscars, yeah. everyone's seen Spirited Away. Now anime is like everywhere.
I do feel with individuals, even the true individuals, they're still gonna have something in common with somebody else. Regardless of how individual you are, there's gonna be someone who's also an individual who has the same likes as you.
Got back from DRT again for $5. Giving women democracy was a mistake. When America gave women the right to, this is his square quotes, the right to vote.
Air quotes.
You all banned booze during the war. I mean, that is true. The temperance movement was very it was very female movement.
I was waiting for somebody to come out with the right to vote comment, I have to admit.
Well, I think I was going to say actually during this stream that I found this very sobering in terms of thinking about how the direction that we're going politically as a country, as a society, as a civilization. It's women are. I think these sort of status-seeking women, which I believe is probably all women, are so sensitive to the opinions of others that you will very rarely get a genuine conversation, a genuine debate. You'll very rarely get an actual intellectual engagement with the ideas, because so much of a woman's attention is so paranoid, so focused on conformity with the group, of conformity with the higher status women, trying to impress other people, that it's really very difficult to get women to engage with things genuinely. It's people in general. I don't want to be too. I don't want to bash on women. People are like, all people are like this.
Yeah. I think everyone's trying to. Well, they're all trying to present themselves in a good light to other people. I mean, there are some cantankerous people who are just generally disagreeable. They don't care.
Yes, there are more men who are like that. Who just
Yeah,
don't.
there are more men like that, but women tend to be more. They want other people to like them. They want to be liked. You know.
And I think men can have a fight. They can have an intellectual disagreement. They can get into a debate and still remain friends in a way that it's quite difficult for women to do.
Well, I can do banter with my male friends that I can't do with my female friends. I can mock, and that's what a lot of my male friends, especially in the sort of music world, who I used to spend a lot, because I was in bands with a lot of guys and things like that. I find it quite able to take the piss, and they do the same, and I found that quite fun. I can't do that with women. In the same way.
I feel like with men and women, when you have a bit of banter with men, you know it's a joke.
Yes.
Whereas with a woman, you don't know whether they're being cynical, judging, or if they are just joking.
Or if they're going to take it personally.
Yeah, so you never know whether or not they're actually joking. They could just be being sarky or just not being very nice.
I haven't seen The Sopranos, but I've seen a few clips from it. And I saw this clip from The Sopranos where Tony Soprano, he's the mob boss. If you haven't seen it, I haven't seen it either, but I know that Tony Soprano is like the boss of the mob, like the gangsters. Yeah. And there's a guy, I think he's like a new guy in the gang, and he starts hanging out with them, and he's joking around with Tony Soprano. He's saying like his wife is unfaithful or his wife is ugly or something. Like he's making it a joke. It's like obviously banter, but it's on something that's just a little bit too close to home. It's like a little bit
he's getting it wrong.
He's going too far.
Yeah.
Just a bit. And the other guys are kind of laughing along with it. Like they think it's just a joke. But Tony Soprano is like not. He does not think it's funny. He's not alright with it.
Well,
and he basically, I think he like threatens to kill the guy.
Well, it's
like
also if someone's new. So someone's come in and they're being a bit too cocky. It would be different if it was someone he'd known since school. Yeah,
exactly.
You know what I mean? Who was part of the group. It's almost like you don't go into. I would imagine if you go into a group of people, especially gangster types, and you start getting a bit too big for your boots.
Yeah, I used to play D&D with a bunch of guys. Like I was in a role playing society at university where the status seeking there, it was all about like who had the best Magic the Gathering deck. Like seriously, if you could win at Magic, you were like you were such hot shit. If you just won a game, and everyone was like. It was that kind of environment where we would just insult each other, and there'd be loads of kind of banter. And I made this joke about this guy being fat, and I was like, you're fat, it's fine, I don't care, like, it's your right to be fat. Like, I really didn't care. Like, I didn't think he cared, but he got really offended, and I felt so bad, because I was like, I don't mind that you're fat. Like, I think in school I was just like, it was part of the joke, but you overstep these boundaries sometimes. And for every time that you get called out on it, that someone makes you feel bad about it, there's probably like 10 or 20 times where they were really offended and you went too far, but you just didn't notice.
But I do think if there's a woman going into a more male world, which I've been in this kind of situation quite a lot, and you do banter with guys in front of other guys, I think there's a line that you shouldn't cross, because you don't want to. You want to be careful not to humiliate the guy in front of other guys, and you're a woman.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because that could be really bad, because they don't want to look like they're being outdone by a woman, because there's all that going on.
There was a bit of that whenever I won at Magic. Sometimes the guys would get a bit sensitive about it, and I was just trying to whatever. Like I lose most of the time, but like I happened to won this time. I just I got lucky or whatever. But sometimes they would be a bit like sensitive about it, and I wasn't gloating or anything. But I think if I was being nice about it, they felt even like I was pitying them. It was even worse for me to be like, "Oh yeah, good game, that was good." Very difficult to navigate, and I was even less socially aware of like myself and what was going on back then than I am now.
You can tread on toes without realising it. With that
exactly,
kind of
I think there was probably a lot of that going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we got a few more super chats that have come in. We got another one from DRT for $2. He says, "What is a pair of trainers?" Never heard of those. I've worn those for years.
Sneakers.
I think he's trying to flex on us for not wearing trainers. Trainers are for exercise and for sports. Don't wear trainers are not casual wear, gentlemen.
No.
For £5 from Webster. I find it funny that biological dominance in men is based on the taller the man is. He will likely be alpha, but with women it's the opposite. Thoughts? Are shorter women
No.
higher status
Oh,
than short men, short women?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
I think it's because of the whole model aesthetic. You know, if the alpha woman is trying to be the best looking, then she's usually very tall, very skinny. You know, she's trying to be the model aesthetic, as it were.
But I
So I
think
think
Wearing-
there is
yeah.
some, and wearing heels. You know,
Wearing
if you've got
heels,
the
yeah.
biggest
But I mean, if a
heels.
woman's really good looking, then she's going to have all sorts of problems with other women because of that. I mean, there's no two, especially young. Not so much old when you get older because you know your looks fade and everything anyway. But I think young, attractive women are going to always have problems with other women. Always, especially older women. And I remember when I was young having older women sometimes being inexplicably weird with me and not realising why, but because I was a younger woman in a social situation where they felt threatened by a younger woman. You know, do you know what I mean? In front of men and things. So there's, I mean, yeah.
After saying so many like apparently very bad things about women, I just want to make it clear that I do like being friends with women. I like talking to women. You can have healthy relationships with women. I think a lot of what we talked about today was very very negative about how it goes wrong, and really female friendships are just a bit of a minefield.
When it goes right, though, I mean, I've got female friends who I've known for absolutely years who are like my sisters, and since becoming a mum and their mums, that takes it to a whole new level. I can talk to them about motherhood and my daughter in a way that I'll never talk to my male friends about, ever. You know, and the closeness, you know, I really, really appreciate my female friends now, and I ring them and we talk for hours.
Yeah,
you know,
I feel like it's a different kind of support as well, and I can't stress on this enough. You know, female friendships work when you support each other.
Yeah.
You know, we always go on about how women constantly put each other down. Yeah, they do constantly put each other down. But at the same time, if you do get a woman who does support you, there's going to be a friendship there, because it's I wouldn't say it was rare, but it's something to hold on to. If it's there, then hold on to it. And
I've got like 3 female friends like that who I like. I love them basically, you know. And I've known them for years, you know.
I think on the other end, like definitely having that kind of intimate female friendship is something I'd really, like to have, especially with other mothers. I haven't yet found a bestie in my community who, who's. I really want like our children to grow up together and to play together. But on the other hand, I think another good way to have female friends is just to have it like an acquaintanceship or like a shared hobby where you see each other, you know each other, you chat, but not to make it. The closer you get, you do kind of open yourself up for sort of backstabbing and blackmail, where I think if you're going to have a network of women, if you work with women, for instance, your female colleagues, I think it's dangerous to get too close to them because it can go wrong in all the ways we've talked about. I think it's much more enjoyable to talk to women as, sort of, what do you call it, like associates, like having a loose relationship with them where you sometimes see each other, you sometimes have a chat, you go to lunch occasionally or something, but not to try to have too many female friends, and especially getting into that sort of group dynamic I was talking about earlier, I think is kind of just dangerous territory and maybe not worth the trouble.
I think for me, I gravitate, the mums that I've really kind of I had that relationship with, like there are some mums, I'm not really close friends with them, but I see them because of my daughter. And I've got a really comfortable thing with them. We're not really close buddies. We don't ring each other all the time like my old friends. But it's just straightforward. I've managed to find 3 or 4 mums who are just really cool. And they're just straightforward. And there's no complications. There's no dramas. Because that's the other thing. I don't like dramas and soap operas. They're just easy, And sometimes I just don't. Some women are just hard work. They're just complicated, and there's always a drama, and it's just like, oh.
Yeah.
Whereas some women are just easy and straightforward, and we can just get together, and it's straightforward, and we'll get the kids together, and maybe we'll make a bit of food together, or go to the park, and it's just straightforward. I don't have to think about it too much,
I do think women who are more sociable than others kind of get a sort of joy out of drama. You know, my friend is a classic one for this, and she's, as I said earlier, she's very sociable. She hangs out with a lot of other women, but every time I see her, she will constantly fill me in. This is quotation marks. Fill me in on all the drama and the gossip that goes on that I do not care about. And I constantly tell her, why are you even concerned about what that person's doing?
Yeah, who cares?
You know, why is that a problem?
Yeah.
You know, I don't understand it, and this is every time I see her. But I don't know whether she tells me because I will just tell her straight and just say, look, wind your neck in, you're being ridiculous. Because I feel like sometimes with female relationships, I do feel like at some point someone has to be honest in terms of, you know, if you are being a bitch or you are being, you know, just gossiping, basically, somebody has to say at some point, right, just forget it. Why are you going on about this? You're being ridiculous.
Yeah.
Stop being judgy. You know, stop being jealous, as I've told my friend more than once. You know, because she has these spates of jealousy, which I now find hilarious, and I just tell her to wind her neck in. But I think that's why we're friends, because she knows that if she tells me these things, I will just give her a blunt answer, and whether or not it is actually an issue or whether it's just gossip, and whether she's just trying to get a rise out of it, basically.
It's also the insecure, needy thing I just can't be dealing with. Like, you know, these kinds of friends who are like, they get paranoid if you don't ring them, and they're sort of needy, clingy, and insecure. And I mean, we're back to the drama thing. I just wonder, are you two have ever been into soap operas? Because I've never ever got soap operas.
Absolutely not.
People go, oh, did you see EastEnders? I'm like, no. Why do I want to see
EastEnders? And it's
so
banned in this
boring,
house.
And I don't care. No. And I think some people they like that petty drama thing, and I think, and I just don't get it. I don't care.
No, that's it. I don't care.
It's boring.
It doesn't concern me or my life. I do not care.
Okay. Well, on that note, we have been going for more than an hour by quite a bit, so I think we'll have to end it there tonight. But thank you everyone for watching. Please let us know your thoughts in the comments section. I never get comments on live streams. It's really weird. Like, I post a video and those people comment, but I post a live stream and there's just no comments. So just whatever you're thinking, just comment it. Come on, like, get that engagement going. I need the YouTube views. You know the whole thing. I'm not going to beg you to like and subscribe or to hit the bell icon, because I'm not a grifter. Just leave a comment. Just tell me to to go away, or tell me you hate me. Just leave a comment, whatever you want to say. Come on, guys. All right. Thanks, ladies, for joining me, and I'll see you on the other side. See you next week. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Now get out.